Okay, it's the end of the session. That's Hagrid. This is Hercules, and this is their roadmap to success. This is not going to go very well if you bark. How about it down? There we go, down. All right. So in this situation, in this session, we really didn't work with Hagrid very much. I did a little behavior adjustment training with him, which I'm going to talk about. But really, he's an insecure dog. He's uncomfortable because he had a bad experience when he was a puppy. I started off the session by talking about the critical socialization period, which is a developmental period puppies go through from week 3 to week basically 12 to 16, somewhere between 3 to 4 months. We don't know exactly when it stops. But basically, it's a fear period. So anything bad that happens to the dog can have a negative impact for the rest of the dog's life. And that's basically what happened to him. He had some guy that came up out of the blue, didn't ask for help, or if he could do anything, just came up and started just lavishing attention on the dog. And the dog was spooked. And then the guy wouldn't listen to the guardian, and he just kept on doing it, and then just walked off. And ever since then, he's been really nervous around new people. Now, during the critical socialization period, it's considered a single exposure period. So if I were to give him a treat, and then somebody walks up, it's like, oh, that guy's cool. The guardians mentioned that he is not a big fan of people who are African American. Might have meant that he didn't meet anybody who's African American during the critical socialization period, and anything they're not exposed to during that period, they're naturally wary and don't want to interact with. I think it's the Mother Nature saying, well, anything you meet for the first 3 months of your life is probably going to be a friend. Anything after that might be a foe. And so basically, he has developed a coping mechanism of acting really tough and aggressive to get people to move away. And he's a big dog, so it works. But in the wrong situation, that could turn into a really bad situation really quickly. So what I want to do is I want to help alleviate his stress and anxiety. And I think a big part of the reason he's stressed is I think he thinks, well, that's demand barking. We'll talk about that in a second because I'm not giving the treats that are in his hand yet. But I think in his mind, he thinks that he's in charge of the humans, but the humans don't see him as an authority figure. So when he's protesting, when somebody comes in, he's saying, look, this guy's going to take advantage of you. I don't like the look of this guy. He's wearing a blue shirt. I don't like blue shirts or whatever it is. And you ignore him. That stresses him out the same way a parent who tells their child not to do something that's dangerous and the child says, okay, and continues to do it. That stresses the parent out. Eventually, the parent's going to lash out and act out. And that's just a normal part of human nature. But for the dog, that can create a bad situation really quickly. So we talked about, first of all, increasing their exercise. They're gentle giants normally, and they're not a high energy breed, but they do need exercise just like any other dog. And exercise is best sprinkled throughout the day. Now, Hagrid is essentially afraid of the stairs, so that might not be an option for him, but maybe getting him chasing a laser or playing a little fetch. I said going up and down the stairs would be great for Hercules. Just throw a treat at the bottom of the stairs when he goes down and gets it. Say the word lobby when a treat goes in his mouth. Remember, anytime you give a treat, they should hear the command word after the treat goes in the mouth, right away, within 3 seconds maximum. And then call him back up and give him another treat and say maybe penthouse, and then throw him up and down, and just do that until the first day with an empty stomach, he goes up and down until he stops coming back up. And then we count each down up as 1, and maybe his maximum is like 35. Well, then maybe 3 times a day we give him 15 up downs. It shouldn't take more than a couple minutes, but now we deplete that excess energy. That's really going to put him in a position to succeed. And for Hagrid, it's definitely something we need to do to help him feel a little bit more comfortable before we have people come over, before I do bat training and go to the vet. We want to get him some exercise so that we take off that top level of energy. So I suggested the guardian start an exercise journal for about a month. And sit. Down. Oh, that beat me to the down. Mark down the dates, the date at the top of the page, write both dogs' name and make a column for each one. And then write down the times. Write down the time and how long the walk was, the time and the number of up downs on the stairs, and the time, the number of fetches, or whatever the activity is. Another activity that you might want to practice is scent games. Go to Google, search for scent games. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but when a dog uses its nose to find treats, that's very mentally stimulating for them, and that can be physically draining as well. So that's something I definitely would work on. Up, sit, up. I'm gonna blow out an ACL on one of these. Okay, so thank you, buddy. Yes, no. Now in the video above, we talked actually about this. A problem right now is he's just very, and he's not aggressive about it. He just really wants those treats, and he doesn't know any better because he wasn't, he just basically doesn't know his size. So the video above that I talked about establishing invisible boundaries will really help with these guardians and help them understand that just because I see something doesn't mean I can get it. Now I'd also probably teach him a leave it exercise, which I'm actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to show you right here. So what I do for leave it, I'll just show you a little bit, is I've got a bunch of treats in this hand. Actually, I only have 2 left. I've got one behind my back. He's trying to take it. What I'm going to do is wait for him to back off, then give him the treat. And let's split this in half because I didn't give myself enough treats for this one. So again, I just leave my hand here, let him molest my hand, and as soon as he backs away, then I give him the treat. Next stage, now let's lick it up and eat it, buddy. You got it. The next stage is we want to drop the treat, but we're going to cage it. Can you see the floor here?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm waiting for him to back off, and when he does, give him the treat and say, leave it, or whatever the command is. Pick this one up. He never gets the one you drop on the ground. So if you want to do this a little bit more, message me. I have videos where I've shown other dogs how to leave it, and I can share one with you where it kind of goes through all these steps. But I would practice that so that, you know, just that concept of not being able to take everything that I see, I think is going to be really important, because I think with both of these guys, they're both big dogs. Sit. Sit. Now I have no more treats, so you have nothing to molest me about. But teaching them to leave things, so it's a valuable command, because we're going to have a bunch of kid toys as the child gets a little bit older. So dogs wants to do it, leave it, and have the dog understand what that means and to move away. Okay, so I think that these dogs are nervous. Like I said, he was nervous. Hagrid?
Yes.
Is nervous because of the bad experience he had during socialization. To help him feel more comfortable, he needs to see his guardians being in the leadership position. And really, he didn't have any rules before the session. So I suggested a number of rules, and I showed the guardians how to enforce them. Enforcing rules like keeping the dog off the furniture, making it sit before we go through the door, not being able to eat in the kitchen or preparing food, or around the humans who are eating, are great ways for the dogs to start to see and identify the humans having more status than they do. I'd also like to see the humans, right now the dogs only eat, they free feed and they eat only late at night. He eats first, and then Hagrid eats after.
Yeah.
And so basically, eating is the most primarily important activity for dogs. So I'd like the guardians to start feeding them themselves. Come up with 2 bowls, go downstairs, put food in the bowls, and don't let the dogs into the room. If you do it in a doorway, it's easier to block using the technique that I showed you in the video above. And then basically, the human who's feeding them needs to eat something first. Now, if you don't want to eat your actual meal, you don't have to eat your actual meal. You can actually just go get a piece of carrot or celery, something crunchy, preferably, that you eat in 5 or more bites. Then when Herc gets a chance to eat, come up with a word, maybe the name of your favorite restaurant or your favorite dish for each dog. So maybe Hercules' word, maybe we call it, call it gyro. And so when he eats, you say gyro every time that he eats. He takes his first bite of food, he hears the word gyro. Well, for him, gyro means I have food in my mouth. It must mean my command word to eat. When Hagrid hears gyro, there's no food in his mouth, so it doesn't mean the same thing to him. So when he's eating, when the human's eating, then neither dog's allowed in the room. Once the human's done eating, then we invite Hercules in, and we takes his first bite of food. We say, hero, whatever you want to say. And then he eats all the rest of his food. When he gets done, he leaves. He can't go to the other dog's bowl. And if he leaves food left in the bowl, pick up the bowl, dump the food back into the bag, and put the empty bowl back down. They should have access to their bowls and see the bowls being empty over and over again. So that way, when there's food in the bowl, that becomes a very important, primarily excitable time. And then once he's done, he has to leave the room. Then we invite Hagrid in, and Hagrid gets to eat all of his food. And we come up with a different word. Maybe we call his word sushi or whatever it is. And after about 2 months, you should be able to say sushi, and he knows that means I can go over and eat. Now, if the dogs are only eating let's say they're probably supposed to eat several cups, look at the bag and figure out how much. So they should eat in each meal. And so let's say that they're supposed to eat 2 cups, but he's only eating 1.5 cups. Well, then I would cut it back to a cup and a half. He's a little bit heavy. We'll talk about a way to keep some weight off anyways. But you want him to get in a habit of cleaning his plate and eating all the food. Then once he does that, then you start adding a little bit more until you get back to the appropriate amount that he should be fed. Now, because he's a little bit bigger, the exercise will help take a little bit of weight off him. Also, what you might want to do is get some fresh green beans, chop them up, fresh green beans into little pieces about the size of the kibble, and deduct about 10% of the kibble he's supposed to get, and sprinkle the green beans in there. The fiber from the beans will help him feel fuller, so he won't feel that urge or that hunger needing to fuel up. Now, the other thing I would do is they feed right now, they only eat late at night. What I would do, go ahead and lean back if you want to. This is just for you and me, so it's not that big a deal, it shakes. But if the dog, where was I going with that? If the dog does not eat breakfast, do not feed them dinner during the transition. We want them to understand, because it's healthier for them to eat. They need it the fuel. They need it as fuel for the day. And so if he stops, if he doesn't eat breakfast, he's like, I'll just eat at dinner. Well, if he doesn't eat dinner, he's going to be a lot more hungry when it comes to breakfast. And having dominion over food is really going to help these dogs kind of give up a little bit of control for the guardians. Now, I also went over a little bit of maintenance, which would be, I forgot to go over this with the guardians. Right now, they have the windows drawn because the dogs are reacting to people that pass by, and every time someone passes by, the dogs think they defended the house successfully. It makes them want to do it more. So what I usually do is recommend setting up Roman blinds. For Roman blinds, what you do is basically go to like Kinko's, and they have a roll of paper that's 3 feet tall, and it's as wide as you want to make it. So people do graduation signs and welcome home signs, stuff like that. So it's white paper. Go get a piece that's big enough and just tape it on the inside of your window jamb, on these windows at the bottom part of the window. So as humans, we can have the drapes and the blinds open, and you can see out because we're taller than the dogs. When the dogs go to the window, they can't see out. And that paper is on the inside, so they can't scrape it down. And we want them to form a good behavior pattern. So if the dog gets in the habit of going over there and I can't see out, well, then that's not rewarding for me. And the more that happens, the less the dog's going to want to go over there, and eventually they just stop going over there and checking it out. So I would do that here. One of the rules is not to allow them on the furniture. I went through a couple of tricks. Anyway, you're about to photo on the camera. Sit. Sit. Yes, you're jumping for treats. I don't have any more treats. That's why you're not drooling quite so much. You can use X mats, but I'm worried that these dogs are just going to pull the X mats off of the couch. So you might use that tinfoil trick that I went over if the dogs are in the room without the guardians present. So otherwise they're practicing going up here. And for dogs, the higher they sit, the more rank or status they have. And he is insecure. He doesn't get up, but he does. And this creates a little bit of an imbalance because one dog gets to do something the other one doesn't. Let me see. I went over some basic potty training. Come up with a command word. Make sure you assign it. So I know that you're not having the problems with them having accents in the house, but in the future, if you do need to ask if you want to go outside, it's nice to have it. And remember, come up with fun command words. One-word commands, but if I want my dog to lay down, I say crash. Some of my clients say chill, some of them say slide. But coming up with one of those, if I want my dog to roll over, I say stunt dog, and he rolls over. People think that's funny, and they laugh, and in this house, we have a little bit of tension because one of the dogs is human aggressive. And so if we can help that dog start to feel a calm, happy energy from the humans, that's going to be very beneficial. Let's see. Look for ways to delay gratification. The food thing that I talked about is a great one. But if you're playing fetch, make the dog sit and drop the ball before you pick it up and throw it. Make it sit before you put the leash on, or things along those lines. The more the dog has to do things to earn a privilege or access or getting an activity to start, the more they're becoming operant, the more they see the humans as being the authority figures. Let me see. I went over a focus exercise with the guardians. If you forget how to do that, message me. Make sure you get to that 15-second on the second movement within 7 days. And then practice that a lot, especially when Hagrid is feeling stressed out, because if he looks at you for longer than 9 seconds, that'll stop the production of cortisol in his blood and release the pleasure endorphins into his brain, which will have a very positive effect on him. Now, when he is reacting to things, distance is your friend. The guardians have identified about a 7 to 11 foot distance, which kind of puts it in, dogs have 3 zones of space, and that's what we refer to as social space. And so he's comfortable as long as the person's in social space and not anything else. Because they go to daycare because they're dog aggressive, they don't play with the other dogs, so they kind of have room to themselves. But the daycare now has new people that are coming in, and he has kind of started lunging at a couple of them, and that can be problematic. So I went over some behavior adjustment training, which is basically sprinkle a little cheese. If they have a setup where they have a fence like this, we can certainly do that there. I have had people actually set up sessions where I do a 1-hour follow-up session where we actually go to the daycare and work with the daycare facility to facilitate that. So if that's something you guys want to do, let us know and we can set something up for that. In the home, we have the split level home and these stairs that we can go down to. So what I would recommend the guardians do is put a Hagrid down there when we have guests come over, and I'm going to set the guests up for success through a CER, or a conditional emotional response exercise, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But actually I'll do that now and we'll talk about that. So for the CER, it's basically associating what we're doing is trying to help the dog create a positive association. So for CER, what we would do is if we have relatives that are going to come and visit, we have the relative, when after they get done working out or just at the end of the day, take a towel, just a hand towel, and wipe down their whole body. Is that him or him?
That's him.
Okay. And wipe down their whole body with their towel. Especially pay attention to here and kind of this area because that's where we have pheromones and it'll be a stronger smell. And do it on both sides of that washcloth. Then put it in a Ziploc bag and make it the freezer Ziploc bag so it's good and durable. And then ship it here. And then basically what we want to do is lay that down on the ground, or you can do it a couple ways. You could probably lay it down, but if they slobber on it, you might want to just hold it up. So hold it up, the dog, when he sniffs it, pull it away, and then drop a treat on the floor. And the dog gets the treat. And then pull your other hand behind your back, and then let him sniff it again, and drop it there. So you're kind of doing this akimbo motion back and forth. What we're trying to do is create an association, a positive association with the scent of someone, so that he can kind of quasi-meet them without the pressure of them actually being there. Hagrid is eye contact dominant and also insecure, and it's inside. And there's all sorts of things that set him up for failure. So if we get him used to the smell of someone and then associate with those pleasant treats, and when he licks the treat up, I would say the person's name. So now we create a positive association with that. So the first thing we want to do is do that. And so this should be done about a week before, at least a week before the person's going to come and visit. So we can have a week, and we should practice that probably 3 to 5 times a day. And then eventually you could also lay it on the ground. When he licks it, you can drop the treat on the ground as well. But I prefer doing this because it's just a little bit wave and then pull it away. So once, hopefully he has a positive association. When the person comes over, before they come over, he should be at daycare for a half day that day. So that he's, and like taking for a walk or playing in the backyard or whatever it is, deplete as much energy as we can. Don't overdo it because that'll make it worse, but just taking that top level of energy and give him at least 20 minutes to recover before the person comes in. What I would do then is kind of similar to what we do when we came in here, is putting him in the basement, which is where normally he's sequestered to. Have the guests come in and close the baby gate at the bottom of the split stairs, and then let him back up. Now, at that point, we could have somebody over there with him, one of the guardians that he's comfortable with. And what we're going to do is have the person that's the guest walk down towards the stairs. And first time, just have him walk down the stairs all the way. And when he gets stiff or holds his breath, or if he barks or anything like that, that's too much, the barking stuff. We want to catch him before he reacts. And that's usually going to be a stare, a stiffness, holding the breath or breathing really heavy, baring the teeth. Sometimes the tail goes up, ears go forward. There are different things. The idea is we want to identify what his tell is. So let's say we walk down 3 stairs before he freezes. The person needs to stop, turn around, and walk back away. Then the person down there would have cheese and sprinkle it on the floor as the person's walking. And then the person's only going to walk to the 3rd step and then turn around and walk back up. And we're going to kind of do an oval. So what we're doing is we're helping Hagrid practice sniffing the ground and not reacting to the person as they're walking towards me and then walking away. And we're not moving too close to him where he can't handle it. The whole point of bat training is he cannot react at all. Once he reacts, everything is invalidated. So you don't want to push too far. And the idea is, at first we can only do 3 steps. We do that maybe for a minute or 2, and he gets all the cheese. And then we give him a little bit of a break. Maybe put him in the basement, let him relax. The guest leaves and goes get some lunch, comes back in. We practice it about an hour later. And then this time we do it maybe 3 steps, and maybe we try for that 4th step. And the idea is to gradually get a little bit closer, but the dog's slightly distracted, sniffing up, getting the cheese, which is a positive reinforcer, and it's practicing sniffing on the ground, which is what they do when they're calm, and it's practicing not reacting to the person. And that's really what it is more than anything else, is practicing the person approaches, and I don't try to bite them or lunge at them or bark at them or any of those things. I'd also like the guardians to teach him how to catch, because that's a wonderful way for the daycare people as well as guests to interact with him at a safe distance and make it a positive thing and make it a game. So to do that, I would have the dog sitting here with one of the guardians he's comfortable with, the other guardian sitting here a couple feet away with some treats or kibble. So most of us, we toss 1, 2, and then we throw it on the 3rd toss. And the dog's looking by the 3rd toss. So just go boom and throw it the first time. Try and throw it so good that all the dog has to do is open his mouth and it goes in. I actually got him to catch 1 this way. When it goes in his mouth, say the word catch, or whatever the word is you want to say. If it hits his nose and then falls, the person who's sitting here picks it up and gives it back to the person. The only way the dog can get it is snatching it out of the air. After a while, you're going to have drool, slobber going all over your house as the dogs are trying to snatch it out of the air. But once he can do that, the daycare people, they can go in there because there's a gated area. They can go in there and they can interact with him, and he practices something good happening. They're not petting him. They're not, and they can give a little eye contact when he's doing this, but they're playing this game with him. And at first you can be at whatever distance you need to do where he doesn't feel threatened, where he doesn't react, and eventually you can get closer and closer and closer. And after a while, it's like, my perception of this person isn't as a negative, it's a positive, because this person just tosses me treats. And you can actually do this with his kibble for the dogs. Now for the feeding, if the dogs don't eat, it's possible for them to go a day or two without eating. My parents' dog did not eat until breakfast of the 4th day. If it goes longer than 3 days, message me. Usually means somebody in the house is cheating. So don't cheat for them, because hunger becomes your ally. You're giving the dog the opportunity to eat twice a day if it eats a little breakfast. If it doesn't want to eat, that's on the dog's tab, not on your tab. The dog's just kind of holding out. I like the way it is now, but the way it is now is going to end up with somebody getting bit eventually, and that's not going to work out well for anybody. I also talked a little bit about setting the dog up for success, like going to the vet. Right now, it's a really stressful situation for the guardians. Well, as a behaviorist, and this is what I talked about off camera, is setting up the dog for success by recreating situations where they fail, where we control the environment, don't make it the real world situation, just an element of the situation they failed, and helping the dog practice one step along the way, one step over and over, and don't go to the second step until the dog knows how to behave the first step. So for the vet's office, what we might do is put the dog in a car and drive to the vet's office on a Saturday or Sunday when they're closed. Walk there, park in the parking lot, get out of the car. And when he gets to the point where he starts whining, whimpering, or showing signs of distress, note how far in the process you are, then go back to the car, sit in the car, let him relax, maybe do a focus exercise. When he's nice and relaxed, let's say you were 20 feet from the door before he started holding his breath. Well, then you practice getting out and walking towards the door, or maybe stop at 21 feet, and then turn around and then give him a treat, and then turn around and walk back to the car. And then repeat it again, and do 21 feet until eventually he's pretty relaxed and he's not hunched over. A lot of times they do what I call leaning. They're leaning over like this far, like they're stealing base in baseball, because they want to run away from the thing. If he's doing any of that leaning, he's saying, I'm comfortable. You keep on practicing this until he casually walks up to the door, and then he's comfortable. Then the next step would be to go there when they're open, and go in there and just open the door, and give him a treat, and close the door. Don't even go in the building. And then if he's nice and relaxed, open the door, give him a treat, close the door. Do that about 5 times. And he's just like, okay, this is okay. I'm not going inside. I'm comfortable with this. And once he's good with that, then open the door and try to take a step towards it. If he doesn't want to go, don't force him. Forcing him is going to reinforce his beliefs that he doesn't want to do whatever the thing is. And eventually you get closer and closer, and you get into the lobby. And then if he knows how to catch, the vet tech can play the game of fetch with him. So if you think about it, also when we take him to the vet's sticking his fingers in the place the sun doesn't shine, and flipping up his teeth, and doing all these things that are invasive, which dogs don't really like. So we're creating a positive association. The vet means just tons of people are going to give you treats, and the best treats you probably ever had. So make sure they're really high value treats, something with a strong smell like a chicken liver, which is what I've been using today. I also went over, shifting gears to going back home, to help flip the leader-follower dynamic and adding a little structure. I went over my petting with a purpose and passive training methods with the guardians, which I think are going to be huge for these dogs. So for petting with a purpose, the dogs just nudge or invade people's personal space. Well, they're telling you, I want your attention, and if I tell you what to do and you do it, that makes me think I'm in charge of you. So from now on, I'd like the guardians, instead of petting the dog when they invade space or paw for attention, definitely don't do anything. Don't even react if they bark. The demand barking, anytime you even look or give it a shush, that's going to make it worse. Just ignore it completely. If it gets too much, just get up and leave the room and close the door behind you. That's a negative punishment. Okay, so for petting with a purpose, if the dog initiates contact or demands attention, you give the dog a counter order. Tell it to sit. When it sits, pet him on his shin and say sit, and only the word sit. You can pet him as long as you want after that. Even if you want to pet the dog, still ask the dog to sit or lay down. If it's already sitting here, ask him to sit over here. It just has to do something to change its state. After a while, the dog will start coming in front of you and sitting down to prepay for attention. This is what we call becoming operant or manding, social manding. So now the dog's learned, if I go sit in front of people, they'll pet me. Well, now you're teaching the dog a much more appropriate behavior than for dogs that are this size, because they're going to knock people over. So now that's petting with a purpose, and I use the watchword paycheck. If I come in a room and I see someone's petting the dog and standing, I'm assuming they forgot to pet the dog with a purpose, and I ask them to, when somebody says paycheck, you stop petting, tell the dog to sit or whatever, and you pet him and say sit, and then you can explain to the person, I did it right, I didn't forget. But we won't realize how often we do pet without a purpose, and so that's what the watchword's there for. I also use the word recognize or reward for what I call passive training. Passive training is waiting for the dog to voluntarily do something they want to do, that they do on their own, and just assigning a command word. So if every time the dog comes to me, I pet it and say, come, well, after a while, the dog's like, well, I'm more likely to come to David when he says come, because that results in a reward. If I'm trying to train a dog to do something, I have to lure them into each individual step, and that takes a while. Passive training is almost like cheating. You just wait for the dog to do it. I taught one of my dogs to stretch this way. Every time he stretched, I pet him and say stretch it within that 3-second window afterwards. Now I can say stretch. He sticks his butt in the air, waggles it, stands up, and he'll do it 10 times in a row on command. So coming up with those command words will really help with basic training for the passive training. I'd also like the guardians to practice teaching the dogs some new tricks or commands. They don't really know a lot of tricks. And dogs, just like us, the more skills they have, the more self-esteem and confidence they have. So if we teach the dog to roll over, do a circle, flop on your side, to fetch, all these, bring me with slippers, go get Don a beer, or whatever it is, and the dogs know how to do these things, they have a self-esteem boost. And also now we have different ways that we can redirect the dog's attention away from things like the focus exercise. So just go to YouTube. There's a ton of free training videos there. And it's super easy to teach dogs how to do all these different tricks. And it'll help the dogs respect the guardians a little bit more and give the guardians a lot of tools to help redirect them. And it's also a nice way to alternately form of exercise. Message me if you want a video on the leave it exercise, and I'll show you how to do that. The last thing is to get a dog to come. I usually like to hold my hand like this. And we have Hercules, who's just about a foot away from the camera on this side. You don't have to film, but I'm holding my hand up like this. To get a dog to pay attention to me, I make a kissing sound like, and then I start lowering it. The lower you go, the more it's for the dog. And then I make him sit. I raise it over his head. As soon as he sits, I pet him under his chin. I would say come, or whatever it is. This is Hercules, and Hagrid's down there, and this is their roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.